Hi, I'm Valerie Engelhart, and in this video, I am going to be painting a very, messy. My husband calls it noisy, and I think that's actually a much better term for it. I'm going to be painting a very noisy, textured watercolor painting using primarily the color Daniel Smith Lunar Black. Now, the style of this painting is inspired by a workshop I took with the watercolor artist Nicolas Lopez. And his technique is to use granulating watercolors and let them move organically by spraying with a little spritz bottle and just letting the pigment flow. And it's really incredible. Go check him out. But I am using what I learned to paint some fan art. And in this case, I am painting GLaDOS in her potato form from the game Portal 2. She's kind of a murderous robot if you don't know anything about Portal, but she has had her consciousness put into a potato. And she is currently being kept in a bird's nest. I assume she was going to be used to feed some baby chicks. I think they were crows. It's been a long time. Oh, speaking of crows, hello there, buddy. They just landed on a branch outside my window. I am using a fan brush that is meant for oil paint, and I've picked it because it's just really scratchy, and I like it. It works. It doesn't really hold a lot of water, and I don't want there to be a lot of water because I want the water to come from my sprayer bottle, not from my brush. And so for the first part, I used these alternating stripes and then sprayed to act as the twigs of the nest. And now I'm adding some of the background because I do want the nest to kind of merge with the background, because I don't want a cutout look. I want a lot of texture. I can always go back and do some negative painting to reinforce that nest. But more than anything, I just want to play with technique. And I am picking up that paper, moving it around, bending it, flipping it, just anything to get that paint to move. And it is a very messy technique, so keep some towels or paper towels on hand. But look at those textures. Oh, it's so cool. So even if you're not into video games, even if you're like, Val, I don't care about Portal, but Portal is really fantastic. If you have any interest whatsoever in puzzle, physics, video games, it is fantastic. And the humor, I still love it to this day. And it's been around for a long time. But all of that aside, just take in the texture, the minimalism of color. We are relying on the organic, branchy shapes that are coming with this single color. Now, I am going to pull out some Winsor & Newton raw umber. It is a color I rarely use, but I have a tube on hand. And I've picked it because, well, she's a potato, a brown potato. And I know that the brown is going to mix in with the black, so I went with something a little lighter. It still comes out very dark, which I want it to. I want it to be dark, almost mysterious and kind of spooky. But the raw umber is also very granulating, and so I thought it'd be a good mix for the piece. Once again, paint on a shape and spray because I want textures, I want flowing color. And this is very different. I did paint it with the idea of maybe submitting it to a Games Done Quick event for charity. But in the Summer Games Done Quick 2025, at least when I looked at the schedule, neither Portal game is being run, so it didn't make a lot of sense for me to submit this at this time. But that's okay, no big deal, because one, this was just a lot of fun and a great excuse to practice some techniques that are unfamiliar to me. And two, it's not like this painting is going anywhere. If in the future a Portal game gets run again, which I feel like there's a high likelihood of that, I can submit it at that time. But look, there's still the texture from the nest is coming into the potato, and The paper does stay wet for a while, and I am using an inexpensive paper for this. My go-to, well, I've got two go-tos, but in this case, it is the Fabriano 1264 paper. And it is an inexpensive, like, student grade paper. It's got some like wood pulp or cellulose as part of the mixture, so it's not 100% cotton. But I find that it works pretty well whenever I do this technique. And I'm just using my fan brush. I am utilizing that curved nature of the brush to paint in some shadows to accentuate the weaving of the branches that are creating the nest. And when I use the paint, it is fresh from the tube. And don't be stingy with that paint either. I'm going to go ahead and wet the surface just to get it to move more. This is going to be the background. And as you can see, some of that raw umber got picked up. Doesn't matter. Really super straight from the tube paint and into the background it goes. So when painting with a single color, I mean, yes, technically I did bring in another color, but the majority of this piece is the lunar black. So I really have to focus on my values. What are values? The intensity of the paint that I've put down, how dark something is. So my light colors or light tints, my dark shadows. And spray brush again. And because the nest is very curved, I want these textures to be straighter. So I am holding the painting upside down and spritzing. And it's important to hold that paper for a little while. Really let that water push the pigment for a bit. And wear an apron and don't wear a white sweater. Now, disclosure, I have sped this up by 150%. I was thinking of keeping it real time, but it was going just a little too slow. But at this speed, I'm not going too fast. You can still get a good idea of how I'm moving things, how I'm working my brush. Honestly, I probably could have sped it up a little more. All right, while that paper is still wet, I am going in, and I love how, because I'm using an oil brush, not a watercolor brush, those bristles are separated and they don't really hold water, so I'm getting really scratchy textures, which is perfect because this is an organic nest. And I'm also being very careful. For example, kind of in the middle towards the right, I've got these lovely textures coming down from the nest. That's beautiful. I don't want to cover it. If you see an area of your painting that you really, really love, just leave it alone. Go work on another area. Use that other area that maybe you don't like as much to add the information that it's a nest. But if there's another area that just looks super cool, leave it alone. One thing I love about this technique is, like, look at those textures to the bottom. I would never have been able to put those in manually. But with just a bit of water, it did most of the work. All right, I had to wait quite some time to let this layer dry. But the beautiful thing about the pigments that I used is they lift very well. And that is what I'm doing here. I've got just a tiny, stiff, flat brush, and I am lifting the computer portion of GLaDOS the potato. And the reason for that is a decent part of this, well, part is white. So I could go in and paint it with gouache, but I like the idea more of lifting it. That way there will still be some of the tone from the paint that I originally put down. And in that way, I can kind of keep that grungy appearance. Because I don't want this like really loose organic nest and then have a piece that's too clean. And on one case, maybe you as the artist do want that to further emphasize nature versus computer. But for this, I'm totally going for a look. So I'm just gonna lift off the paint, scrub, dab with a paper towel, scrub, dab with a paper towel. And this particular paper, the Fabriano 1264, lifts beautifully. And so it's really important to understand your paper and your pigments when you work with them. I know that these particular paints aren't staining and they lift really well. And I know that this particular paper lifts really well. So it's great for this technique. But if I were using like my M. Graham quinacridone colors, I mean, it'd look beautiful, but that doesn't lift. I don't even care what paper you use. I cannot get that stuff to lift. So if I want to do something where I want those colors to stay put, I'll use those tools. I want a very noisy painting with easy lifting. So I use pigments and paper that allow me to do that. And I went on that long-winded ramble with the purpose of there is no right or wrong in the universal sense. There's only right and wrong for what you want to achieve. All right, there are wires that come out of her because, computer. So I am scrubbing away where those wires are going to be. Now I am going to paint some of these wires, if not all of these wires, either yellow or red. But because I am doing this in watercolor, even the more opaque watercolors like the cadmiums are still transparent. So by lifting off the paint, I am trying to create as white of a base as possible so that my colors have more clarity when I paint them down later. And when you do this, make sure your painting is dry. Like it needs to be bone dry, or as dry as I can get things to be here in the Pacific Northwest. But I would, for this kind of painting, encourage you not to use a hairdryer, because part of getting those really natural textures is to allow things to dry naturally. I'm not anti-blow dryer, but it comes back to that little manifesto I had a few minutes ago of use the tools that will get you the results you want. If you want these really gritty textures, you don't want to use the blow dryer. At least not during that wash. However, after scrubbing everything, letting that dry and then painting on top with like just my flat cadmium colors, well, yeah, then I can blow dry that because all of my good texture stuff is set. And I'm not looking to get any texture techniques from the yellow or the red. So I can pull out a blow dryer at that point, and it's no problem. All right, I skipped ahead a bit just because all I was doing was scrubbing the wires. Once you've seen me scrub 1 and 2 and 3 wires, you've seen it. So to spare you, I've moved on to the part where I actually have the color. Yay! I've got my cadmium red medium hue by Daniel Smith, and the yellow is also going to be a Daniel Smith paint, a cadmium yellow. I picked the cadmium colors because they are a more opaque watercolor. So, it's still watercolor, still transparent, but it is a stronger color. And I liked that contrast of a strong flat color versus the very grainy black and white and raw umber look. And then I am lifting a little bit of that paint off just to create some shine and dimension. going in with the yellow now, and having that bit scrubbed out really does let the paint show better. And it's nice because it means I planned out where it needs to go. Now, another thing you could do is use gouache. Gouache would stand out much more, and I considered it, but I ultimately just wanted to stick with watercolor. Now, the reason I have picked a small synthetic brush for painting on the color, not just for scrubbing, is it doesn't hold a lot of water. And I want to put on this color very bold and strong, and I don't want it very wet. For a couple reasons. I want to have better control of my paint, but also that pigment that's already down, that Daniel Smith Lunar Black, it lifts pretty easily. Now, I don't think so easily that if water touches it, it'll move, unlike my Hematite Genuine, but still, why risk it? Plus, this area is a lot more detailed. So when you're doing like a big, loose, expressive wash, lots of water. Go get a mop brush, use those natural fibers. The bigger, the better. But when you get down to these little itty-bitty details, especially on this 9x12 size, a little flat brush do just fine. And here's the finished painting. If you liked this video, press the like button so I know to make more like it. And if you have any ideas for me to paint, let me know in the comments below. I'm always looking for new subjects. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye!